Greetings, this is Captain Rex, and you're watching Starwarsnut77, home of the Star Wars memorabilia reviews.
Hey Star Wars fans and gamers, my name is John and welcome to my Star Wars Nut 77 show. This is my top 10 Star Wars games of all time. I'll put a link to part 1 here. You can check that out. That's where I go over the top 25. I talked over numbers 25 to 11. This is now 10 through 1. So there's some great games I mentioned in part 1. I encourage you guys to watch that first. On to number 10. Number 10 was a launch title for the Gamecube, came out in 2001. It's Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader. And it's actually, you play as both Luke Skywalker and Wedge Antilles, the actor who played Wedge in the movie, in the original movies, actually reprised his role in this game. It's a sequel to Rogue Squadron, which came out for the N64. Updated graphics, updated gameplay. It's a really high-paced, action-packed game. Certainly recommend checking out. One of the best games on the Nintendo GameCube, and only came out for that system. Number 9 on my list is a game that only came out for the Super Nintendo. It's Super Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. Came out in 1993. It was published by JVC, as well as later on THQ. It's updated, and it's a sequel to Super Star Wars that came out a year before. I really like the improved graphics. The gameplay's improved as well. I like the fact that they use the Force elements as well in this game. You play as Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, as well as Chewbacca. And it really follows the Empire Strikes Back movie fairly well. There's new enemies and stuff like this. It's a really challenging game. I know there's this one stage particularly where you're in Dagobah, and there's this like swamp monster, and it always takes me forever to kill this freaking monster. I have to use the Force and slow things down, but even then, it's super challenging. So it's a lot more difficult than Super Star Wars, but it makes, just like with Super Star Wars, it makes great use of Mode 7 graphics with Cloud City and when you're flying, and there's some awesome elements in this game. So certainly worth checking out if you own a Super Nintendo. Number 8 on my list is a game that came out in 2004. It was ported to PC, Mac, Xbox, the original Xbox, PlayStation 2. It's Battlefront. It was developed by Pandemic Games. I really like the unique gameplay style of Battlefront. Basically, you can choose your different character and your different class of character, and it throws you into a battle. You can play either under first person or third person perspective. There's different worlds you can travel to. It's really engaging. You can play local multiplayer on it as well, which is cool. Always great to play multiplayer on it. And if you're a big fan of Star Wars, this is definitely one to check out. Like I said, it's got seriously unique gameplay elements to it. Number 7 is a game that came out in 2006. It's Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy. It basically follows the first episode 4 through episode 6, and you play as Lego characters. It was developed by Travelers Games, who went on to create other great games like Pirates of the Caribbean, Indiana Jones, Batman, etc. And this Star Wars is really one of their first successes. And there's no really voiceovers in these games, but it's actually a pretty easy game to play. You can't really die in it, but I really like the use of Legos and what they did to kind of incorporate the Legos into the game. It's got a lot of replay value in it as well. You can collect different coins and collect points that way. But basically, you can't really die in the game. You just when you die, you just reappear. But it does follow the games pretty well. Number 6 came out in 2004. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. It's developed by BioWare. It was a follow-up to Knights of the Republic 1. It came out for PC as well as the original Xbox. It takes place 5 years after Knights of the Old Republic. There's new planets, new characters, just like in the original one, where you can actually decide if your character is going to be bad or good, which is cool. Graphics are great. The story is not as good as the original one, in my personal opinion, but it's still worthy, and that's why it's number 6. Number 5 is a game that came out only on the N64, came out in 1996. It was a really early release for the N64. It's called Shadows of the Empire. You can play either in a first-person perspective or a third-person perspective. It's actually it's based on a book written by Steve Perry, came out the same year. Really, Lucasfilm wanted to push Shadows of the Empire. They had books, they had comics, they had action figures. Basically, the story goes, you are Dash Rendar, and it takes place between episodes Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and Luke and Leia have been captured by Prince Caesar. Or I think that's how you pronounce his name anyway, Caesar. And basically you have to go and save them. It's got some great music. The music in this game is phenomenal. It is a challenging game though, nonetheless, but it's worth checking out. Number 4 on my list is a game that came out in 2005, only on the PC and the original Xbox. It's called Republic Commando. It's a first-person tactical shooter. So if you played games like Rainbow Six, you basically play as these Republic Commandos, and you have to kind of tell them where to go and situate, and there's a lot of strategy involved. It's a really fun game. It reminds me a lot as far as the graphical style as like Halo or Metroid Prime. It's a very unique first-person shooter game with tactical elements in it. It's definitely a lot of fun to play for the original Xbox or PC. Number 3 on my list is actually a series of games. It came out only for Mac and DOS. It's the XWing series, and it was released between 93 and 97. There was different expansions. There was XWing, and then there was TIE Fighter, and there was XWing versus TIE Fighter. There's a B-Wing expansion. Basically, if you play games like Wing Commander, it's a simulation game. It's a first-person perspective. You're either an X-Wing or a TIE Fighter, and it's a space battle game. A lot of fun. Graphics obviously improved as the games went on. X-Wing Alliance is a great game. I wish it was ported to the home console. Unfortunately, it never came to the home console, but if you have a PC and Mac or you run DOSBox, definitely check it out. X-Wing, any of the X-Wing games, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, all those are great. Check them out. I have a tie for number 2. I have 2 games. I'm going to cheat here. I have 2 games that I recommend for number 2. The first one is Battlefront II. This is a sequel to Battlefront 1. Came out in 2005. It's actually, they added a few things. They added new planets, they added new characters, they added ability of you can actually play as a Jedi. They appear at random. You can play as a Jedi in these games. Super fun game. It's played in the first-person perspective as well as third-person perspective, and it's one of my favorite Star Wars games. It's Battlefront 2. The second game I recommend for number 2 on my list is the original Star Wars Arcade. Came out by Atari in 1983. There's a cockpit style where you can sit down and play it with a yoke, or there's a stand-up one which I own and you can play it as well. It's a vector-style graphic game. The music is amazing. There's voices from there's actually voice lines from the movie. You can play in the trench, and it's just a lot of fun to play. It's one of the best arcades, in my personal opinion, of all time, and that is Star Wars. That's number 2, tied for number 2 on my list. Now on to number 1. I'm sure you guys are curious what number 1 is. You may know by now, and it's a game that came out in 2003. It's Knights of the Old Republic. Came out for PC and the original Xbox. Probably the best Xbox game you can play. If you own an original Xbox, this is definitely one to check out. It's a RPG game developed by BioWare, and it's set 4,000 years before A New Hope. And basically the story goes, I don't want to ruin too much for you guys, but you got Darth Malak and Darth Lord Raven, and basically they have released a Sith Armada, and it's your job to defeat them or join them. So what's cool about this game is you can develop your path, and depending on what your choices you make, it reflects later on, your choices later on as well and what happens. So the graphics are great. There's different worlds you can travel to. It's one of the most advanced Star Wars games out there. That's number 1 on my list. Well guys, that concludes my top 25 Star Wars games of all time. I really appreciate you guys watching. Please follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I'll put those links below. Also check out my gaming website, games31.com. Thanks, and may the Force be with you. Take care.